Welcome to another episode of Behind the Message, where we take a behind-the-scenes look at the prayer and preparation that goes into messages shared at Open Door Church. I want to welcome you to our episode today. I'm your host, Michael Chandler, and I want to encourage you, wherever you consume this content, hit subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. I'd also love to invite you to rate or write a review. That would mean so much to us. And if this content is helpful to you, we'd love to ask you to share about it on social media. And the reason is that it helps us get the word out about the conversations we're having on the podcast. We think they're important and that it can help a lot of people. In this month's episode, I'm joined by members of our teaching team, Pastor Aaron and Pastor Sean, as well as Pastor Lanette Reed, as we discuss the message series, Love and Legacy. I'd also like to take this opportunity to support our marriage and family pastors, Sean and Lanette Reed, here at Open Door Church. They recently released their new book, Marriage in Transition, and it's incredible and full of practical tips to help you navigate the inevitable changes that happen in life and in marriage. And I found it to be incredibly relatable and so encouraging for me and my wife. And what I love most is that it actually helps you activate a plan of action to make real changes in your life. You can visit marriageintransition.com to purchase your copy today. Well, let's jump into the conversation. So before we jump into our discussion about this series, I want to give us our question that came in. I want to remind you, you can always send us your questions at behindthemessage@opendoorchurch.com. All right, here's the question, guys. Great question today. And before I ask the question, I'm just going to be honest. I cannot list just one. So maybe you guys can, but here we go. What book, other than the Bible, has shaped your way of thinking in life?
All of Sean and Lanette's books.
Marriage in Transition, available now on Amazon, wherever books
are sold.
So what book, and for us, I can't pick just one. So what books, and I think about it like this, what books do you keep coming back to? Mm-hmm. So what books, when you read them or listened to them, was it like a defining moment in life? I think that'd be a good way
I've
to
got
think
mine,
about it.
so I can.
Well, you lead.
You want me to do that?
Yeah.
So Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer is a book that when I get into a dry place, I consistently go back to.
Right.
And then the second book is his rebuttal, which is one of the reasons why I love the book so much, and that is God's Pursuit of Man. Those two books are... just life to me, and I love them. Yeah. He wrote it. What's interesting about that book is the story about that book. He wrote that book from his knees. He never left his knees writing that book. No. And it is it's very powerful. And then I read all R.T. Kendall and N.T. Wright. I'm a huge fan of both those authors, and so I read a bunch of their stuff. But I could list a bunch more, but those are my two ones that I go back to over and over again. So
that's good.
For me, I would say one of them is a really small book, but it is very impactful, especially early on in ministry for me when I was trying to get myself together. But it was called Make Today Count by John Maxwell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very small book.
Johnny.
Quick read, but I literally took chapter by chapter and broke it down to a daily agenda.
Yeah.
And that shaped my daily agenda. Mm-hmm. Daily agenda changed my life. The other one that I would say is any book on the kingdom by Miles Monroe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Miles, man, legend.
Miles Monroe.
Just legend.
Every chapter, every sentence, it just feels like it takes me deeper into the way that I was supposed to perceive what Jesus brought to the world. Mm-hmm. And I believe that he came to establish a kingdom, not just like a nonprofit organization. You know what I mean? And the picture that we receive from his writings just changed my life.
I don't know, mine are going to sound a little deep. So the first one is Jack Hayford.
Oh,
of course.
Penetrating the Darkness.
Yeah, it's such a good book.
That book, I read it every year.
It's not fair. She pulled out Jack Hayford.
Yeah,
sorry.
Dropping legends up in here. Legends.
But that book, it always reminds me to fight the right way.
That's good.
But then it always sharpens me.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, I just stumbled upon this one last year, and it's going to be an annual read too, it's called It Didn't Start With You, by a psychologist, by Mark Wallum. And I could not help but read that book and see God's fingerprint all over it. And it's pretty much talking about the issues and the struggles that you may deal with today did not start with you, but rather they started with your family early on.
Yeah.
And so going back, talking about generational curses and all of that. So
Can I just make one comment? Because I think it's so interesting when we went around this table. And Michael, why don't you share yours and then we'll talk about it? Because I know you're going to share good ones too.
Yeah, so I'll do two that are more leadership oriented that I come back to all the time, and we're big fans of them here in our staff, and that's Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Yes.
And strengths-based leadership. I revisit those throughout the year and come back to them. Then there's another book that you may never have heard of. It's called Anonymous by Alicia Britt Cole, and it talks about the anonymous years of Jesus and what he had to go through to prepare for the 3 temptations that he experienced.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting.
Okay.
I never heard of that one.
It's a phenomenal book that, for me, I keep coming back to it because it helps keep me grounded, and it helps me maintain humility no matter what platform we ever get in life. And so it's really cool to think about that for 30 years Jesus was anonymous. And then he stepped on the scene. So what was God shaping in him?
You're spoiling it, man. Don't.
When he was anonymous.
You're telling me. You're telling me the whole thing. I
so
just want to
curious.
read it
I
now.
know. I'm not going to
What
read
was
it
he
now.
learning?
Thank you for that.
Apart from like that, books that I have enjoyed recently, God in the Pandemic,
Yes.
by N.T. Wright.
Phenomenal book written in a moment.
Yeah. Holy Fire by R.T. Kendall, about the glory of God and the power of the Holy Spirit. The Third Option by Miles McPherson, about the racial divide we have in our country. Those are some great books I've read recently. For church leadership, I go back to Robert Morris's The Blessed Church.
It's a great book.
Probably every year.
I do. I read that one every year.
Yeah.
My point, though, is like very few of us are reading authors that probably anybody listening to this podcast would recognize. And one of the things is because we're actually reading people that write books instead of take messages and make them into books.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the bottom line. And so, if you're a person who's wanting to be in ministry or someone who really wants to learn, read some people who are older than you and actually have life experience, because the people that we're talking about here have actually lived enough life to know what they're talking about. So it's good stuff.
All right. So as always, you can email us your questions at behindthemessage@opendoorchurch.com. We'll pick one next month and answer it in next month's episode. All right. So we're talking about love and legacy. One of the things that I thought about throughout this series when you guys were sharing is that relationships never stay the way you left them. So we don't just walk away from our relationship and hope it stays that way. It requires constant investment if I'm ever going to see a return on that investment like I want to see.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to build great marriages, not just good ones. That's really our heart at Open Doors. So part one, you guys said this: your marriage won't achieve greatness on autopilot. Love that statement. Can you share what went into that? How did you guys learn that?
You want to start?
I want to hear what you have to say.
Honestly, I married my friend who I was attracted to, and we had young kids, and I somehow anticipated that she was there to make me happy. And
surprise.
Then I woke up, and all of a sudden, she needed things more than what it was that I was giving her when we were dating. Time, attention, empathy, understanding, like all of that. So the level of leader that I needed to become as a man, the level of maturity I needed, I was nowhere near close to being there. And I just thought that it was going to be good between us because it was like that when we were dating.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Everything was cool. And it was less effort, I think. So in the dating phase, and when we, really were first getting together, honestly, this is an interesting thought that just popped up. We were kind of driven toward one another because of what we were going through as well.
Right. Yep.
So it was like we needed each other in a way, that made it easier to be together during that discovery phase.
That's good.
It was like, and so finding freedom in the person,
Yep.
but then you get into it and you want freedom from the person.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Deliver me from this evil. What have I done?
And so it was a autopilot mindset that I had. It was
Yeah.
like, I thought that it would get better, if I asked God to fix her, if she would just wake up one day and be different or whatever. But truth was, we had to invest, as you were saying.
I think most people want to get better themselves,
Yeah.
but they never in turn look at their marriage as a result of them getting better. And some people greatly misunderstand just all of the goodness and power that God has within them. And that if they begin to develop that and sharpen those skills, that they're going to get better, and in turn your marriage is going to get better.
Right.
And so I don't think people walk around, and they should, but I don't think people walk around thinking, oh, I want to have a better or a great marriage.
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to better yourself.
That's so good.
Well, I love that. And you guys said, in the message that, and I think it's so true, your relationships improve as you do. And ultimately, if I want a better marriage, then I need to be a better husband. I've got to first start looking at myself and how can I grow spiritually, grow emotionally, before I'm looking to another person to meet those needs. Anything you want to add?
I just, for us here at Open Door, I think marriage is the one place that we can't afford to be good at. There's a lot of things in our life that good is good enough, what I'm saying? But this is the one area that God gave us that everything else is meant to flow out of. And so if I want to be great at anything, it needs to be marriage, which means that I got to get to work.
Yes.
And that means I'm going to get to
Right.
work on, like Lanette, that was so beautifully said. I've got to get to work on myself, but we also got to get to work on us. And I think that's where, I love that thought process about autopilot. It's just a lot of people that it's like we invest a lot trying to get the prize, but once we get it, we're like,
good.
well, we're good. And so we end up in this place where, and it just, the greatest fulfillment of my life has come in working on my marriage.
That's good. That's good. And y'all said, change is inevitable. And I think you make this statement in the book too. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. And how many of us
It's a good statement, man.
I mean, we approach life that way.
I'm going to tweet it right now.
Go for it.
Like how many of us, we cruise through life on autopilot, not just in relationships, but just in life in general. And we allow, we react to change instead of actually taking action. So you use the story of
Which was
Moses.
brilliant.
Yeah,
Never heard that one talk before.
props to you guys.
I've done it in
for-
small grace, but I was like, this is, I was like, wow,
Props
let's
to
go.
you guys for pulling out the story of the circumcision of Moses' son and
Yeah.
tied it into
Only the Holy
relationship.
Spirit could do
Touching
something
things,
like that.
touching. I was like, Lord Jesus, take us now. Rapture.
First off, that was awkward for me too. I just want y'all to know.
So when we read it, we probably had a 3 to 4 hour
Yeah, we did.
conversation in the living room, like just going through this story and
Yeah.
then trying to figure out what exactly does this mean.
Yeah.
And we even went so far, we called
Yeah.
a friend of ours who's a rabbi,
Yeah.
and we were like,
What is this talking
tell us what this means.
Yeah, because part of her statement is strange. When
yeah.
she said, "You're a bridegroom of blood to me," that's a really strange statement, and it's like her Midianite version of a blessing, a benediction after the circumcision, and what Jewish scholars are saying is that it could be interpreted that you are a relative of blood to me, and that could be referring to the child, saying that now you're in the covenant and you're okay, or it could be that Moses was dead and because he had this judgment upon him, but now she had her husband restored and redeemed and brought back to her. So now it's like, I got you back, resurrected, and his life was spared. And I think that that's interesting in that she reacted to the change by doing the right thing, the thing that was necessary in that moment.
Right, yeah.
And so change is inevitable. Their life was shifting. They were on the road to a new place. They had new goals that they were doing. But the growth was they had to do what they had to do when God challenged them in a specific area that needed to be developed. And I'm telling you, this for us in our journey, I remember one time we lost a house, like it was foreclosed on, literally because of the way I reacted in that season to a house that we owned. I mean, we were purchasing, but it was falling apart. And there was a lot of problems that were going on inside the building. We were going to have to continue to dump money in it. And then we were kind of under attack at a certain point and different things of that nature. There was a lot that was happening at the same time. But the way we reacted was not the way that we should have.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it was like we just let stuff happen to us.
Right.
Instead of us saying, all right, we're going through all these things. There's trouble on every hand, whatever the case. But God will strengthen you to become who it is that you need to be wherever he's confronting you in that area.
So good.
And I've been having this thought, even, since we started talking about this whole thing, it's that like when we lean into the Lord for, as we've been talking about it, your growth, your own personal development, the key is to understand that God's grace is sufficient. Any area that needs to grow as a father, a husband, wife, whatever, it is God who supplies everything you need.
That's right.
This isn't just about like self-help.
Right.
Right. It isn't just about I'm going to just will myself to be better. We have something more than that because we have someone greater than that, and he can walk with us and help us and strengthen us to become someone that we were created and ordained to be. So I think that that's really important as we think about improving the relationship. And we're talking about self-development. It means that then at that point there's a part of us that is even more yielded and surrendered to God.
Yes.
Right.
So the real growth happens at the greater level of humility and surrender. It's becoming more vulnerable in your life to a point that you say, I can't do this on my own.
Right.
I realize that this is broken in me. God help me.
Yes.
And as we lean into the Lord, he strengthens us, and all of a sudden he literally transforms us.
Amen.
And we're able to come back out and grab the flint. You know what I mean?
Easy chowder.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. And you guys mentioned in the message, and I know you talk about it more in the book, but you talked about one of the steps of action is a weekly tune-up with your spouse. So can you guys walk us through what does that look like for you guys? And I know that you can share a little bit with that too from your perspective.
Yeah. So we're not perfect at this, because schedules, kids, work, travel, all that still plays a part even after you decide to implement something like this in your home. But the key is to be very diligent and try to make it work. But we try to get together once a week, 45 minutes to an hour. And our goal is to not just address, issues in the marriage, but address vision and goals and desires. And then, what do the kids need? Who's going to be the one that's going to go grocery shopping? You've got this meeting on this day. Well, that clashes with what I have. So it gives us an opportunity to share responsibility in the home.
That's good.
For that week. So most people, say, well, it's the woman's job to go grocery shopping. I don't like going grocery shopping. I actually hate going grocery shopping. And I am very appreciative when he goes grocery shopping.
I actually find it kind of therapeutic.
No.
Because I like to cook and I can find the most quality ingredients. The ingredients are important.
He lives to eat. I just eat to live. I just, So that gives us an opportunity to say, I can't do it this week. Can you do it this week? Or something like that. So
the other part I think is you can get together and start that meeting off with some praise and celebrate some of the things that have been done really well.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times when people finally do get the courage to talk, because a lot of people don't want to talk because they're afraid sometimes of how their spouse may react. And so they're thinking to themselves, if I bring it up, then this will happen. And the problem is, if you don't bring it up, something's already happening and it's probably going to continue to get worse. So you may as well say it in a loving manner, but you can prepare your mind before you actually say something. And one of the ways that you can begin the meeting is with some praise for what you have admired about the person and you can affirm in them that, hey, when you did this, it made me feel like this.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, you know, you took your time to give me a compliment the other day, and I thank you for that. And that helps to reinforce and reaffirm within them, hey, this is something that they took notice of. I am valued. You know, like when you have a person that can say, I apologize, or I thank you for what you did, it helps you to feel seen and recognized, and you don't feel like within the relationship you're kind of being taken advantage of. So it does help in that meeting. Have a time of praise. Have one main thing that you guys are going to be thinking about, maybe two that you're talking about, and then you leave out being able to say, okay, we're on the same page about how we're going to move forward.
Yeah. I've talked about it before here, but Lauren and I do several times a week the 4 W's: wows, worries, wishes, and wounds. And that really helps us unpack what we're carrying, because I think a lot of times, and you guys have spoken to this, in marriage, in life, in all the things you mentioned, we end up carrying things we don't even recognize, or especially one of the two of us is either more of an introvert or an extrovert. So therefore it kind of takes somebody having a key to kind of unlock that and allow that conversation to take place. So we do that. And then we've done this for years. People who have been here, that they know we go on a lunch date almost every single week. I'm not going to tell anybody where we go because then I'm afraid everybody will be there. But we go out of town. We go about 35, 40 minutes away, and we talk on the way there, and we talk, and it's very much that tune-up. And you know, it's something that we've always done now for, I guess, 10 years, that we've gotten away together and make that a priority. So that really helps us stay in that rhythm.
That's great. So shifting gears, week 2, you guys.
It was so awesome because I didn't know it was going to happen.
I didn't know either. I just saw it and was like, well, that was amazing.
I was flying back. I was flying back, and I see Jacob there with boxing gloves. And what is happening? Like, what is going on? And then that night I'm here, I was like,
hey, hats off to the production team.
Like
for real. They did a great job.
So cool.
So we talked about how to fight the right way. And I want you guys to share, you know, what maybe hit the cutting room floor from the message that didn't make it in. But I wanted to start this week off with, you guys used a quote from C.S. Lewis I thought was incredible to set up the message. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. So
good.
The whole message, we're talking about laying down the need for control. So what didn't make it into the message that you wished you had time to put in?
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, there's so much. I'll lead with personal testimony. If I struggled with anger a lot in my life. And what I realized when I was kind of going through the process of freedom is that the more angry I am becoming, it is a direct indicator that something in me is not trusting God with my future. Because a part of me is wanting to be in control of something or someone. And it's irritating something in me that I'm not in control. Okay. Which means then I will assume control, or something in me is going to begin to react to either the circumstance or the person. In this case, we're talking about relationships. So if I'm angry at my wife or my kids, something in me is saying I cannot force them, or I'm trying to force them to do something that I want them to do, and they're not doing it. That means that that's an area in my heart that I have not yielded to God to say, again, this goes back to surrender. Humble yourself under the hand of God. He will exalt you in due season.
That's good.
Right? It's not my job to exalt myself over my wife or my kids. And so even though I have authority over my children, I'm not in control of them. Okay? Especially as they're teenagers and everything else like that. Now they abide by my rules and all the rest of that, but we're raising them to make wise decisions, right? We're talking to our spouse because we want them to make choices, and we're looking for their input. It's not for me to lord over them. It's for me to surrender to the Lord. So if ever I'm at a point where I'm either extremely afraid, extremely anxious, extremely angry, all of these things are like blinking, engine lights that, hey, something's off in my faith. Something's not being communicated properly. There's some area where I'm struggling to trust. Let me go to God and say, Lord, all of these feelings, all of these areas, I need you to look at this and tell me what it is that I haven't yielded to you.
Right.
And that way I can come back to my wife with a right attitude, not as her Lord, right? But as her lover, and we can walk forward with a right spirit.
I think I probably would have addressed the silent fighter. So, you know, most of the time people would talk about yelling and throwing and, you know, be more of an explosive type.
But what happens when someone just shuts down?
Yeah, and they don't think that they're in fight mode, but they really are. And I want to say they're probably in a more dangerous position because they're inwardly, there's a
Like
battle,
passive aggressive.
and that tension and that stress is eating them up physically. And so I probably would have addressed that and given a little more dialogue as to how to, because that was me at one point.
So how you get healed?
At the beginning, that was me in the sense of he would be so aggressive and just his natural demeanor that I would just shut down.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to talk to myself. I like talk to myself in the mirror, prepping myself just to speak with him. Like I literally had to say, Lanette, just speak the truth in love. You can't control how he receives it. But you do have a responsibility to speak it and speak it in love. So I had to speak God's word over me because it wasn't just his behavior, but it was ultimately a little bit of inferiority and insecurity and all of that was playing a part in that. So I had to have God deliver me from some areas, you know, whether it was writing down my thoughts and leaving it on a pillow as I went to bed and letting him read it and letting him go through his emotions and all of that. So I literally had to figure out ways that was best for me to get out my thoughts and articulate it. And I think over time, I grew up a little bit, and you know, now he can't shut me up. I'll tell you what I feel.
Well, I loved how you guys ended the message. You said this point, when you throw in the towel, you submit to one another. And you guys really unpacked what the Bible says about submitting to one another and how submission and surrender are synonymous. Anything you guys want to add to that? I thought it was a great way to end that message.
Yeah. So to that, again, I said it during the message. I'm gonna repeat it because I think a lot of people have a hard time when we say the word surrender or submit.
Yes.
It's and especially in the context of like if a person is one spouse is going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I submit to a person? Do you want me to just follow them?
Right.
You know, and it's like there is still sensibility there. It's not about living recklessly because someone in the relationship wants to do things that are going to put the family in jeopardy or whatever the case may be. I think you can choose your battles with that in the sense of there are times when, you know, if you follow their advice or if you go a certain pathway, it's not going to be detrimental to the home. It's not going to hurt you to say, I don't have to fight this battle to win and prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And so I would say really choose the battles wisely. And if you do need to push back because it's going in the wrong direction, there's a way you can do it.
Yes.
That still is of a spirit that can still honor a person, even though their decisions may not be the most honorable.
Right.
Like I can still affirm you,
Right.
but then separately say, but I don't like this decision.
So you mean I can honor somebody and not agree with them?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure. So you can honor somebody and not agree with them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just
So I really do think you need to unpack that in a relationship context.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people who spouses are on totally different pages. A lot of what you guys shared is incredible when two spouses want to make their marriage better.
Yeah.
What do you do if one person, you guys are on different pages?
Oh man, I just had like so many examples pop up in my head. So I'm gonna go like Bible first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go straight Bible. Jesus washed disciples' dirty feet. He's 100% righteous, 100% God, completely holy. Ain't ever done nothing wrong. You know, human beings, we're completely in the wrong.
Yep.
We're in rebellion. We're unrighteous, unclean, everything you can put out there. And yet he became a man to enter into our world because he saw beauty beyond our brokenness.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And he honored us in a way that they weren't even at that time in his way, in Jesus's day, they weren't honoring him. And so even though he was always going to be more right than anybody around him, right? Because he always had the answer.
Yeah.
And they were always going to push back against him in his righteousness and holiness, because that's the rebellious nature of man. He still gently delivered to people that he was about to redeem through a cross.
Yeah.
Right? He endured this affliction on himself for the benefit of those, that he found redeemable. And I think that there are moments where people might not be in their best place mentally, emotionally, and yet we can look beyond their faults.
That's right.
And we can say, but there's so much that's redeemable in you,
Yeah.
and I'm not giving up on that.
Right.
You have value because you're made in the image and likeness of God, and I'm going to honor that. And I will be for you who it is that God has commanded me to be, and I'm going to love you, because love is that great commission. That's that command that God has given me, the greatest commandment: love God, love people. So I will be who God empowers me to be. And this, again, it goes back to this theme of you got to lean into the Lord.
Yeah.
When we think that agape love is something we conjure up through our willpower, it's part of our willpower, but that willpower is in partnership with God's power.
Yes.
And it's us saying, I will unconditionally be for other people who God has created me to be, regardless of if they're choosing to be who God has commissioned them to be. That takes strength other than,
Yes.
my human nature. And that's when you can disagree with where they're going and yet honor the image and likeness of God that you see on them.
Yeah. I was even thinking there were times in our marriage where, we had to make a decision, and the decision wasn't, life-threatening, or wasn't going to change the trajectory of our home. But we just had to make a decision, and we didn't agree as to what was the best course of action. But what I decided to do, for the sake of arguing and going tit for tat and all of that, I decided to take a step back and just follow his lead. And I had to really just come to terms with, you know what? If we go down, we're going to go down together, but we can bounce back up. This is not it's not threatening our home. It's not threatening our children. It's just a decision that needs to be made. We don't know exactly what to do. Let's just go for it. But we're going to go for it together.
Right.
And so I think there are times where someone has to be willing to step back and just say, okay, you take the lead on this, and wherever it takes us, we're going to go there together, and not point fingers and see, I told you so. You should have did it the way that I saw it.
Right.
So,
That's good. Well, and I think that leads perfectly into the last part of the series, which to me spoke so much to the legacy that we're leaving. So when I think about that, I think about the question, what story do you want to tell?
That's really good.
And in those moments, I think we have to figure out what hill is worth dying on. Is this gonna, you made the statement, this isn't gonna affect the trajectory of our family. So that's probably not a hill worth dying on. But if this is gonna affect the story that I'm gonna tell, we need to fight that battle.
Yeah.
We need to have that conversation. The last part of the series, you made the statement, legacy is what we leave in the hearts and hands of the next generation. So anything you want to add to...
I just want to say, I've had multiple people say that was the best message on legacy they've ever heard preached.
Wow.
So it was amazing.
It's good stuff.
Wow.
And it was strong, but it was right, and it was good. And I mean, it really ministered to a lot of people.
Appreciate that. We were planning on speaking something else. And I told Lanette, I think it was Monday night before.
It was Tuesday.
Okay, so it was Tuesday.
It was the 9th hour.
Yeah. And I got what I call a download, which is like where it's almost like a word for word.
Yep.
Say this, say this, say this.
Right,
And
Makes
I
message
mean,
prep very much a lot easier.
Oh, yes, it
Thank you,
does.
Jesus. I
Okay.
got one the other day. I was like, give me, thank you, Lord. I received
Downloads
like
awesome.
in the Matrix.
That's exactly how I feel. So it's like, okay, it's in there now, right? So that's what happened. And so I think the delivery was stronger, and at points I was just like, I felt like it was almost too strong, but it was one of those things for open door.
Yeah.
I felt like what I saw, it's so hard to put into words that we really are members, are very significant for the purposes of the kingdom. We're a part of a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so when we think of your dad, your mom, and what's been birthed here, and it started with like a dream and their obedience. You know, one of the things your mom said when the staff took a bus ride and went back to some of the older locations and everything. And one of the things, you know, I kind of was asking her questions each stop that we were at.
Because you're a learner.
Right. You know, and who doesn't want to learn from Pasadena? She's amazing. And so, you know, while we were talking, I just asked her, I was like, what was the secret sauce, you know, that helped you guys get from place to place? And one of the things she was like, you know, honestly, we continue to obey God. You know, we continue to obey God. And I mean, it was like so simple, but it was
like, that's it.
Yeah. But it was so profound, though, in the sense that it was like, it wasn't based on their perfection, but they just kept obeying God. And they were willing to trust God at the next stop, in the next stop, in the next stop. And they ran into obstacles, and we heard some amazing stories. But now we see, because of their obedience to go for the dream, but to protect their unity, that's important. See, nowadays you got people who are trying to plant ministries and their marriages are out of order.
Yeah.
You know, you got folks who, you know, they want to build a great business, but their own home isn't in order. And it's not to say that, you know, Pastor Greg or Pastor Dina were perfect, but I do believe that you had two people who really believed in the Lord and they loved their family.
Yeah.
And they honored God in that way first. And now you're seeing the next generation. So God gives you a shepherd for a reason. That as sheep, we get to come in and learn. He could have given us any metaphor to describe the relationship between a senior leader and his congregation, right? Between Jesus and his church.
Yeah.
But he gives us that of a shepherd with sheep. And so if he brings us into the company of someone who's going to cover and speak into our lives and teach us and father us, and this is the legacy that we get to learn from, why be a part of this house and not glean from that?
That's right.
You know, you have to, and it shows us what we're capable of, that from where they came from and what they had to begin with, to see what the Lord is doing at Open Door.
Yeah.
How many souls saved?
Yeah.
How many people being touched per week?
Yeah.
How many ministries in this community were birthed out of this house? It was because they were willing to continue to obey and keep their house in order.
Right.
You know, so I mean, you could speak more to that, but I'm saying that I saw it, and I'm just in my brain. I'm like, come on, Open Door. We have so much that we can now believe for, because you've seen what God can do.
You're living in it.
You're living in
Standing
it. Yeah. And so it's like, so let's not let the devil sit here and dictate what's going to happen in our homes, because what is being hindered is this great legacy that can be birthed in every house if we would love each other and obey God, you know. So anyway.
Anything?
No, you know, when he showed me the notes, he was like, you know, take a look at them and, you know, add your 2 cents. And, you know, I've been with them long enough to know the difference between a good, inspiring word versus apostolic, moving word. And I took a look at it and I was like, yeah, you got this one on your own. You know, I just felt like it was for the house.
Yeah.
It was definitely for the house. So.
You know, when anybody speaks about legacy, it gets me jacked, because I'm evidence of a legacy. And I think a lot of people step in here and they don't recognize that. And I think that what Sean spoke to that weekend was awakening, and it does my heart good. You're part of that. You're part of the dream. You know, even what you're talking about, marriage, and, you know, when you guys felt called here and we joined forces to pour into marriages. I mean, we can't have continued legacy without strong marriages. And it's sad today, because there's a lot of churches that, you know, because when we do speak to it, we know that really we're only talking to, 40% of the room, you know?
That's true.
But the truth is, to understand that for us to fully know Jesus' relationship to the church, then we have to have a good understanding of marriage.
That's right.
Yep.
Is such a powerful thing. And how can we build healthy families if we don't have healthy marriages? And so I'm grateful, Lauren's grateful that you guys came here. We love you guys. What you help us do here is absolutely unbelievable. And the book is amazing, but the series was amazing because it wasn't just about marriage. It was about marriage at Open Door. And we're forever grateful.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all.
Man, I love that conversation. Just want to encourage you, if you missed any parts of this series, you can check those out on the Open Door app, available on any app store. And don't forget, send us your questions. Email us at behindthemessage@opendoorchurch.com, and we'll pick one and answer it in next month's episode. I just want to thank you for being a part and for inviting others to watch or listen to this content if it encouraged you. Until next time, God bless.